In the gleaming spires of Valister, capital of the Galactic Triumvirate, an ancient prophecy was whispered among the citizens. The spear of Empress Toya, who founded their civilization 10,000 years ago, remained stuck in the sacred stone. Legend said only the one worthy of leading the triumvirate during its darkest time could pull it free. Commander Neri stood before the tall monument in the central plaza. Her silver skin caught the light of the 3 setting suns. 6 royal guards flanked her, their armor polished for the annual ceremony. "Begin the ritual," Elder Minho said from his position at the base of the stone. Neri nodded. As the highest military leader of the Valestorans, she had tried to pull the spear every year for 2 centuries. Each time, like the thousands who attempted before her, she failed. She approached the stone, which swirled with colors that seemed impossible, blues and purples that moved like liquid yet remained solid. The spear shaft jutted from its center, covered in strange markings that even the best scholars could not fully translate. Placing her 6-fingered hands on the spear, Neri closed her eyes. The crowd fell silent. She pulled with all her strength, her muscles straining beneath her ceremonial armor. The spear did not move even a fraction. After a full minute, she stepped back and bowed her head. "The time has not yet come," Elder Minho announced to the crowd. "The worthy one is not yet among us." As the crowd dispersed, Neri remained, staring at the spear. "Elder, the Void Swarm approaches our borders. Reports show they have already consumed 3 outer planets. If this isn't our darkest hour, what would be?" Elder Minho's antenna twitched with concern. "The prophecy has its own time, Commander. We cannot force its hand." High above the planet, a small ship approached the orbital station. It was not like the elegant curved vessels of the Triumvirate. This ship was blocky, practical, built by a younger species still new to the stars. Inside, Lieutenant Ju adjusted her uniform one last time. As Earth's newest ambassador to the Triumvirate, she felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Humans had only joined the galactic community 30 years ago, and many older species still viewed them with suspicion or amusement. "Ambassador, we're docking now," the pilot called back. "Valesteran representatives will meet you at the airlock." Ju took a deep breath. "Thank you, Captain." The ship shuddered slightly as it connected with the station. Ju gathered her diplomatic bag, which contained gifts from Earth and her personal items. The airlock cycled, and with a hiss, the door slid open. 2 Valestorans waited on the other side, their silver skin gleaming under the station lights. One wore the insignia of the diplomatic court, the other the uniform of station security. "Ambassador Ju," the diplomat said, antenna moving in what humans had learned was a greeting pattern. "Welcome to Valister. I am Sunho, your liaison." Ju bowed slightly, as she had been taught. "Thank you for your welcome. I'm honored to represent Earth in the Triumvirate." "Your timing is fortunate," Sunho said as they walked through the station toward the shuttle bay. "You've arrived during the Festival of the Spear." The ritual was performed today. "The Festival of the Spear?" Ju asked. Her briefings had covered major Valestoran holidays, but this one wasn't familiar. Sunho's antenna moved in a pattern indicating surprise. "Your briefings did not include it. Strange. It is perhaps our most important ceremony. The spear of Empress Taha has been embedded in the sacred stone since the founding of our civilization. Once each year, our leaders attempt to remove it, like Earth's legend of Excalibur," Ju murmured. "Pardon. An old Earth story. A sword stuck in stone that only the rightful king could pull free." Sunho's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. "Fascinating. Perhaps there are more similarities between our peoples than we realized. According to our legend, only the one worthy to lead us in our darkest hour can remove the spear." As they boarded the shuttle that would take them to the planet's surface, Ju gazed out at the shimmering world below. Valester was beautiful, with its purple oceans and silver cities. "Has anyone ever pulled it free?" she asked. "Never," Sunho replied. "For 10,000 years, the spear has remained unmoved. Some young ones believe it is merely symbolic now, a tradition without meaning. But the elders insist the prophecy will come true when needed most. The shuttle entered the atmosphere, giving Ju her first close view of the Valastoran capital. Tall spiraling towers rose from carefully planned districts, connected by transport tubes that glowed with energy. At the center stood the tallest structure of all, the council spire, seat of the triumvirate government. As they landed on a platform halfway up the spire, Ju noticed unusual activity. Valastoran military vessels moved in precise patterns above the city, more than would be expected for normal security. "Is something happening?" she asked Sunho. The diplomat's antenna flattened slightly, a sign of concern. "There have been developments at our borders. Nothing for you to worry about on your first day. Tomorrow you will be formally presented to the council. Tonight, you should rest in your assigned quarters." But as they walked through the corridors of the diplomatic wing, alarms suddenly blared throughout the spire. Sunho froze, antenna rigid with shock. "What is it?" Ju asked. "The Void Swarm," Sunho whispered. "They've breached the outer defense perimeter. They shouldn't have been able to move so quickly." Before Ju could ask more questions, Commander Nari and a squad of soldiers rounded the corner. "Diplomat Sunho, bring the human ambassador to the secure level immediately," Nari ordered. "Council emergency session in 1 hour. All ambassadors must attend." Ju found herself hurried through corridors and down lifts until they reached a heavily guarded level deep within the spire. Other aliens, representatives of the many species in the triumvirate, were gathering, their translators creating a buzz of overlapping languages. "What exactly is the Void Swarm?" Ju asked Sunho. The diplomat's voice lowered. "They are our oldest enemy, not truly alive as we understand it. They consume everything: energy, matter, even information. The first swarm nearly destroyed us before Empress Taya found a way to drive them back. Now, after 10 millennia, they have returned." Ju felt a chill, her first day as ambassador, and she was facing what sounded like the end of the world. Little did she know that the prophecy of the spear was about to change everything. The emergency council session left Ju's head spinning. The Void Swarm was worse than anything humans had encountered in space. Not a species, but a phenomenon, living darkness that consumed everything it touched. The triumvirate's outer colonies had already fallen. Defensive fleets reported their weapons passed through the swarm as if firing at shadows. "We have perhaps 10 days before they reach Veluster," Elder Minho told the gathered ambassadors. "All non-essential personnel should evacuate to your homeworlds." Ju stood. "Earth stands with the triumvirate. We offer any assistance we can provide." Some of the alien ambassadors made sounds of approval, others of doubt. Humans were newcomers, their technology far behind the advanced races. After the meeting, Commander Nari approached Ju in the corridor. "Your offer is brave but unnecessary. This is not your fight. All life is connected," Ju replied. "If the Void Swarm consumes the triumvirate, Earth will be next." Nari studied her with all 6 violet eyes. "You speak wisdom beyond your years, human." "Ju, please." "Very well, Ju. Since you insist on staying, perhaps you would like to see our historical archives. Understanding our past conflict with the swarm might prove useful." The next morning, Ju couldn't find her way to the archives. The spire's layout confused her, with its spiral corridors and gravity lifts that seemed to change direction. Her translator implant malfunctioned, turning the Valastoran language into nonsense patterns. When she tried to ask for directions, she only received confused looks. Eventually, she found herself in a quiet, dimly lit hall far from the diplomatic sector. The walls here were older, made of actual stone rather than the living metal of the newer sections. "You appear disoriented, human," came a voice from behind her. Ju turned to see Commander Neri, her silver skin almost glowing in the low light. "I was trying to find the archives," Ju admitted, "but I think I'm completely lost." "Actually, you've wandered quite close to something more interesting than the archives," Neri said. The sacred stone chamber is just ahead. Few outsiders ever see it. Curiosity sparked in Juwu. The one with the spear you mentioned yesterday. I'd love to see it, if that's allowed. Neri's antenna twitched in what seemed like amusement. Under normal circumstances, there would be permissions required and ceremonies observed. But with the void swarm approaching, old protocols matter little. She led Juwu down the hall to a circular doorway. Placing her hand on a panel, she spoke words in the Valstoran language. The door slid open silently. Inside was a round chamber with a high domed ceiling. Light came from no visible source, creating a soft glow throughout the room. In the center, on a raised platform, stood the sacred stone. Juwu gasped. The stone was unlike any material she had seen. It shifted colors constantly, from deep blue to purple to colors she had no name for. It seemed almost alive, pulsing with inner energy. From its center protruded a long spear, its shaft covered in intricate markings. It's beautiful, Juwu whispered. It is our most sacred relic, Neri said. Empress Taya used this spear in the first war against the Void Swarm. According to legend, she discovered their weakness. Before she died, she embedded the spear in this stone and said only the worthy one could remove it and save us in our darkest hour. Juwu approached the stone slowly. These markings on the spear, they look like equations. Neri's antenna stiffened in surprise. You can make sense of them. Our best scholars have struggled for centuries to decipher their full meaning. Not exactly, Juwu said, leaning closer. But they remind me of human calculus, except multidimensional, like they're describing movement through more than our 4 dimensions. As she studied the markings, Juwu noticed something odd. When she focused on one section, the symbols seemed to shift, rearranging themselves before her eyes. Does the writing change? She asked. Neri stepped closer. Change? No. The markings have remained the same for 10,000 years. Look at this section, Juwu pointed. When I focus on it, it seems to shift into something almost readable. Neri stared at the spot Juwu indicated. I see no change. Perhaps humans perceive things differently than we do. A sudden alarm blared throughout the chamber. Neri's communicator activated, projecting a small hologram of a Valstoran officer. Commander, the swarm has increased speed. They've consumed the Helia system. New projections show arrival within 5 days, not 10. Understood. Increase evacuation efforts. I'll report to command shortly. The hologram disappeared, and Neri turned to Juwu. I must go. You should return to the diplomatic wing and contact your own world. Wait, Juwu said, still focused on the spear. These equations, I think they describe how the void swarm moves. See this pattern? It's showing something folding through higher dimensions. Neri hesitated. You truly see meaning in those markings. I'm not sure, but Juwu reached out, her fingers hovering near the spear shaft. May I? You wish to touch the sacred relic? Neri seemed shocked. I cannot authorize. Just to trace the symbols. I won't try to pull it or anything. After a moment's consideration, Neri nodded. Very well. Many have touched it while studying the markings. Juwu carefully placed her fingertips on the shaft. Instantly, a jolt of energy ran up her arm. The symbols began to glow with a soft blue light. What's happening? Neri asked, antenna rigid with alarm. I don't know, Juwu gasped. The markings, they're making sense now. It's like they're speaking directly into my mind. Images flashed through Juwu's consciousness, stars dying, darkness spreading, and a pattern, a mathematical solution that could stop it all. The void swarm wasn't just consuming matter and energy. It was consuming dimensional space itself, folding reality to move faster than light. Neri, she said urgently, I think I understand how the swarm travels. They don't move through space like we do. They fold space around themselves. That's why your weapons can't hit them. They're partially in another dimension when you fire. Neri stared at her. That's impossible. Such technology is beyond even theoretical understanding. Not technology, Ju corrected, her fingers still tracing the symbols. It's their nature. And the spear, it was designed to counter that somehow. The chamber door slid open, and Elder Minho entered with 2 guards. He stopped abruptly at the sight of Ju touching the sacred relic. What is this? He demanded. Commander, why is the human ambassador handling our most sacred artifact? Before Nari could answer, the entire spire shook. Another alarm, different from the first, echoed through the chamber. Elder, one of the guards reported, checking his communicator. A void scout has breached our outer atmosphere. It appeared without warning. Minho's antenna flattened against his head. Impossible. They cannot be here already. It's because of how they travel, Ju insisted, reluctantly removing her hand from the spear. The equations on the spear, they explain it all. Your weapons can't hit what isn't fully in our dimension. Minho looked at her with a mixture of disbelief and curiosity. You claim to understand markings our best minds have studied for millennia. I don't know why, but yes, they make sense to me, Ju said. And I think I know how to stop the swarm. The spire shook again, more violently this time. We need to get to the command center, Neri said. The scout must be attacking our defense grid. Take her with us, Minho ordered, pointing to Ju. If there's even a small chance she understands something we don't, we need her insight. As they hurried from the sacred stone chamber, Ju glanced back at the spear. For just a moment, she thought she saw it glow brighter, as if responding to her departure. The mystery of the spear would have to wait. Right now, a small piece of the void swarm was attacking Veluster, and she needed to convince the Triumvirate's leaders that she might have the key to stopping it. In the command center of the spire, chaos reigned. Velesteran officers rushed between stations, their antennae twitching with stress. Massive displays showed the Void Scout, a shifting black mass that seemed to bend light around it, moving through the upper atmosphere. Our weapons pass right through it, reported a young officer. It's as if it isn't fully there. Ju studied the tactical displays. The scout's movement pattern matched exactly what she had seen in the spear's equations. It's phase shifting, she said, existing partly in our dimension and partly in another. Commander Neri turned to her. Explain. It's like. Ju searched for a simple way to describe it. Like dipping your hand in water. Part of your hand is in the water, part is above. The scout is only partially in our reality. That's why your weapons can't hit it. They pass through the part that isn't here. Elder Minho's eyes narrowed. And you learned this from looking at the spear. The markings on the spear are instructions, Ju said. They show how to counter the swarm's movement. I need to study them more carefully. Take her back to the sacred stone, Minho ordered. Give her whatever she needs. For the next 3 days, Ju barely left the sacred stone chamber. She took images of the spear's markings and worked with them on datapads. Velesteran scientists joined her, skeptical at first, then increasingly amazed as she decoded patterns they had studied fruitlessly for centuries. On the morning of the 4th day, Ju found herself alone in the chamber. The scientists had left to implement some of her findings into the defense systems. She stared at the spear, still firmly embedded in the shifting stone. What else are you trying to tell me? She whispered. As if in response, the symbols on the spear began to glow. Ju approached and placed her hand on the shaft. The connection felt stronger now, more focused. Images flowed into her mind, not just the movement of the void swarm, but their origin, their nature. They're not attacking, she realized aloud. They're feeding. Our universe is energy to them. The door opened, and Commander Neri entered. The defense modifications are working, she said. We managed to damage the scout. It's retreated beyond our moon. That's good news, Ju said, removing her hand from the spear. But the main swarm is still coming, and it's much larger. Neri approached the stone. The scientists say your insights have advanced our understanding by centuries. How is it possible that you can read these markings when our scholars cannot? Jiwoo shook her head. I don't know. Maybe because humans think differently. Our brains evolved differently than yours. Perhaps, Neri said, unconvinced. Or perhaps there is more to the prophecy than we realized. It says the one worthy will remove the spear. It never specified that person must be Valistoran. The implication hung in the air between them. Jiwoo laughed nervously. I'm not going to try pulling the spear. I'm just trying to understand its message. A young Valistoran rushed into the chamber. Commander, urgent news. The main swarm has accelerated again. New projections place arrival within 24 hours. Nari's antenna went rigid. 24 hours, that's impossible. Even with dimensional shifting, they shouldn't move that fast. They're feeding on the stars they pass. Jiwoo said, each one makes them stronger, faster. We must inform the council. Nari turned to leave, then looked back at Jiwoo. Bring your latest findings. They need to hear everything. The council chamber was the highest room in the spire, a circular space with a transparent dome showing the stars above. The 12 council members sat in a semicircle, with Elder Minho at the center. Representatives from the other major species in the triumvirate filled the observer seats. Ambassador Jiwoo, Minho said when she entered with Nari. Commander Nari tells us you've made significant discoveries about the Void Swarm. Jiwoo stepped forward. The swarm exists partially outside our dimensional space. That's how they move so fast and why conventional weapons are ineffective. But the spear contains equations that show how to target them properly. She displayed the modified equations on the room's main projector. If we adjust your defense grid to emit energy at these specific frequencies, we can hit the swarm where they actually are, not where they appear to be. The council members murmured among themselves. A tall, blue-skinned counselor spoke. These modifications will take days to implement across our fleet. We don't have days. There's something else, Jiwoo said. The spear itself seems to be a weapon designed specifically to fight the swarm. I believe it can disrupt their dimensional shifting. The sacred relic is not a weapon to be used, objected another counselor. It is a symbol of our civilization. It's both, Jiwoo insisted. Empress Taha knew the swarm would return. She left the spear as a tool for fighting them, along with the knowledge of how to use it. Elder Minho raised his hand for silence. Even if what you say is true, the spear remains embedded in the sacred stone. No one has been able to remove it in 10,000 years. The prophecy, Commander Neri said quietly. It states that only the worthy one can remove the spear and lead us in our darkest hour. All eyes turned to Jiwoo. No, she said, stepping back. I'm not. I can't be. Ambassador, Minho said, would you be willing to attempt what no non-Valestoran has ever done? Would you try to remove the spear? Before Jiwoo could answer, a massive tremor shook the spire. The stars visible through the dome suddenly darkened, as if a shadow had fallen over the planet. The swarm, gasped one of the counselors. They're here. Tactical displays activated around the chamber, showing hundreds of void entities entering the system. The outer defense platforms were already going dark as they were consumed. There's no time for debate, Neri said. If the human can understand the spear's message, perhaps she can remove it as well. Elder Minho stood. Take her to the sacred stone. Now. As they rushed through the corridors, Jiwoo's mind raced. She was no chosen one, no great leader. She was just a diplomat who happened to understand some alien mathematics. The sacred stone chamber was empty when they arrived, the stone pulsing with faster, more intense colors, as if responding to the swarm's presence. What if I can't pull it out? Jiwoo asked. Then we fight with what we have, Nari said simply. But the prophecy has guided us for 10,000 years. I believe it will not fail us now. Jiwoo stepped onto the platform. The spear seemed to shine brighter as she approached. She could feel the equations and symbols calling to her, showing her not just how to fight the swarm, but why it was so important. The void swarm doesn't just consume matter and energy, she said, understanding flowing through her. They consume possibility itself. They'll erase not just what is, but what could be. She reached for the spear, her fingers hovering just above the shaft. Only the worthy one, Elder Minho murmured. Taking a deep breath, Juwu grasped the spear. The moment Juwu's fingers closed around the spear, a jolt of energy surged through her body. The markings on the shaft blazed with blue light, casting strange shadows across the chamber. Elder Minho and Commander Neri stepped back, their antennae rigid with awe. "It responds to her," Minho whispered. Juwu felt a presence in her mind, ancient and vast. Not words exactly, but concepts flowing into her consciousness. The spear was more than a weapon. It was a key to understanding the void swarm at the most fundamental level. "I can see them," she said, her voice distant as the connection deepened. "The swarm isn't just consuming our universe. They're refugees. They're fleeing the death of their own reality." The spire shook again, more violently this time. Alarms blared through the chamber. "The outer defense ring has fallen," reported an officer over the communication system. "Inner defenses engaged but failing to impact the swarm." "Juwu," Nari urged, "if you can remove the spear, now is the time." Taking a deep breath, Juwu tightened her grip. She didn't try to pull. Something told her brute force wasn't the answer. Instead, she opened her mind to the equations flowing from the spear. They spoke of dimensional harmonics, of matching frequencies across realities. Slowly, she turned the spear 1/4 rotation to the right. The sacred stone responded, its swirling colors aligning with the movement. Juwu turned the spear another quarter, feeling resistance give way to a smooth gliding sensation. One more quarter turn, and she heard a soft click. "It's a lock," she realized. Not a test of strength but understanding. With a final turn, the spear slid free from the stone, with no more effort than pulling a knife from butter. Light exploded from the newly opened space, bathing the chamber in brilliant colors. Elder Minho fell to his knees. 10,000 years, he murmured. 10,000 years we have waited." Juwu held the spear before her, feeling its perfect balance. The shaft hummed with energy, the markings still glowing blue. She could feel every equation, every instruction embedded in its design. "We need to get to the Defense Control Center," she said. "The spear can be connected to your systems. It will show your weapons where to fire." As they rushed through the corridors, Velusterans stopped and stared at the human carrying their sacred relic. Some bowed, others simply watched in shock. The spire continued to shake as the void swarm attacked the planetary shields. The defense center was a massive circular room near the base of the spire. Hundreds of Velusteran officers worked at stations, directing the remaining defense platforms and ships. A huge holographic display in the center showed the swarm surrounding the planet, dark patches spreading across the protective shields. Commander Neri strode in first. "Clear the primary control station," she ordered. "Ambassador Juwu needs direct access to the defense grid." A young officer vacated his seat, staring at the spear in Juwu's hands. She sat down, examining the control interface. "There should be a connection point," she said, the knowledge coming to her through the spear. "Something that can link the spear to your systems." An older technician approached. "There is a ceremonial port in the main console. It was built into all our major systems in ancient times, though none knew its purpose." He pressed a sequence on the console, and a circular opening appeared, exactly the size of the spear's base. "That's it," Juwu said. She positioned the spear above the opening and carefully lowered it into place. The moment the connection was made, every screen in the control center changed. The symbols from the spear appeared across the displays, flowing like water. The defense grid reoriented, weapons adjusting to new frequencies. "The spear is reconfiguring our entire defense network," gasped the technician. "It's changing targeting parameters, energy frequencies, everything." On the main holographic display, The defense platforms began firing at the swarm. Instead of passing through the dark entities, the energy beams connected, causing the void creatures to writhe and shrink. "It's working," someone shouted. But the victory was short-lived. The largest void entities shifted, adapting to the new attack. They began to move in patterns Ju recognized from the spear's equations, evasive maneuvers through dimensional space. "They're adjusting," she said. The spear predicted this. She placed her hands on the console near the spear, feeling the connection strengthen. The equations flowed through her mind, showing the next step. The swarm was intelligent, adaptable. To defeat them required more than static defenses. "We need to activate the second protocol," she said. "The spear doesn't just target the swarm. It can predict where they'll shift next." "How do we do that?" Nari asked. Ju's fingers moved across the console. Guided by knowledge, she couldn't explain. "The spear needs to synchronize with the planet's core energy. It's not just a weapon. It's a dimensional anchor." Elder Minho, who had followed them to the control center, stepped forward. "The planetary core. That power has been sacred since Empress Teia's time. No one has accessed it for any purpose. That's why she put the spear in the stone," Ju said, understanding dawning. "The sacred stone is connected to the planet's core." The spear was recharging, waiting for the moment it would be needed again. Another violent shake rocked the spire. Part of the ceiling collapsed at the far end of the control center. "Shields at 30%, reported an officer. "Multiple breaches in the outer city districts." Minho looked at the destruction on the displays, then at Ju. "Do what you must." Ju nodded and turned back to the console. Following the equations flowing through her mind, she initiated the core connection. The spear began to pulse, drawing energy from deep within the planet. The entire defense grid synchronized, weapons firing not at where the swarm entities were, but where they would be after their dimensional shifts. One by one, the smaller void creatures began to dissolve, unable to escape the precisely timed attacks. But the largest entity at the center of the swarm remained unaffected. It expanded, consuming the energy of the attacks directed at it. "It's too powerful," Nari said. "Our weapons can't generate enough energy to harm it." Ju stared at the creature. The spear's knowledge flowed through her, showing one final solution. It would require more than just firing weapons. It would require direct contact. "I need to take the spear to the main entity," she said quietly. "That's suicide," Nari replied. "Nothing survives direct contact with the void. The spear will protect me, at least long enough." Ju stood, pulling the spear from the console. The connection remained, flowing through her now instead of the defense grid. The spear wasn't just meant to direct your weapons. In the end, it's meant to be used as Empress Teia used it, directly against the heart of the swarm. Elder Minho approached her. "The prophecy speaks of the worthy one leading us in our darkest hour. If this is truly what must be done, then we will follow where you lead." Commander Neri straightened to attention. "I'll prepare a ship, the smallest and fastest we have." As the Velusterans rushed to prepare for this final mission, Ju held the spear before her. The blue glow had intensified, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. She didn't understand why the spear had chosen her, a human diplomat with no special skills or powers. But she knew what had to be done. The fate of not just Veluster, but all worlds that might lie in the swarm's path, now rested in her hands. The small Velustoran scout ship cut through the upper atmosphere, its engines straining against the pull of gravity. Inside the cramped cockpit, Ju gripped the spear with one hand and held onto a safety bar with the other. Commander Neri piloted the vessel, her 6 fingers moving across the controls with precise skill. "We'll reach the main void entity in 3 minutes," Neri said. "Are you certain about this plan?" Ju looked at the spear, still pulsing with blue energy. "The spear is showing me what to do. It was designed for this moment." Through the view screen, the darkness of the void swarm spread across the sky, Smaller entities moved like black smoke around a massive central mass that seemed to bend light itself. Defense platforms continued firing at the smaller creatures, occasionally destroying one, but the main entity grew larger by the minute. "What exactly will happen when you reach the center?" Nari asked. "The spear will create a dimensional bridge," Ju explained, the knowledge flowing from the ancient weapon into her mind. "It won't destroy the swarm, that's impossible, but it can redirect them back to their own reality." The ship shuddered as they passed through the planetary shields. Beyond the protective barrier, the smaller void entities swarmed toward them. "Evasive maneuvers," Nari warned as she banked the ship sharply. The spear glowed brighter, and the void creatures seemed to pull back, as if repelled by its light. The path toward the central mass cleared. "The spear is protecting us," Ju said, "but it won't last long. We need to reach the center quickly." Nari pushed the engines to maximum power. The ship shot forward, hurtling toward the heart of darkness. As they drew closer, Ju could feel a strange pull, not physical, but mental. The central entity was aware of them. "It knows we're coming," she whispered. The view screen darkened as they entered the outer layers of the main entity. Visibility dropped to 0. Only the instruments and the blue glow of the spear provided any light in the cockpit. "We're losing power," Nari reported. "The void is draining our systems." "Just a little further," Ju urged. "The spear's readings show we're almost to the core." Suddenly, the ship jerked to a stop. Outside, only darkness was visible, but Ju could feel they had reached the center. The spear pulsed more rapidly, almost humming with energy. "This is as far as the ship can go," Nari said. "All systems are failing." Ju unstrapped herself from the seat. "I need to take the spear outside." Nari's antenna went rigid. Outside, into the void. Nothing can survive direct contact. "The spear will protect me long enough." Ju moved toward the airlock. "There's no other way." After a moment of hesitation, Nari nodded. "The airlock won't cycle normally with power failing. I'll have to open it manually from here. Once you're outside, you'll have maybe 2 minutes before the ship is completely consumed." "That should be enough time." Ju positioned herself in the airlock, the spear held before her like a shield. "Thank you, Commander, for trusting me." "The prophecy chose wisely," Nari replied. "Good luck, Ambassador." The inner door sealed, and Ju waited. A moment later, the outer door slid open, revealing a darkness more complete than anything she had ever seen. There was no cold, no heat, simply an absence of everything. Taking a deep breath from her suit's oxygen supply, Ju pushed herself out into the void. The moment she left the ship, she felt the pull of the entity all around her. Not gravity, but something deeper, a hunger that tried to consume her very existence. Only the spear's blue glow kept it at bay, creating a small bubble of reality around her. Ju drifted away from the ship, which was now barely visible as a darker shape in the endless black. The spear pulsed faster in her hands, guiding her. She needed to reach the exact center of the entity. As she moved deeper into the darkness, images began to flash through her mind. Stars dying, worlds being consumed, and behind it all, a desperate hunger. The void swarm wasn't evil, it was starving. Its own universe had collapsed, and it was consuming this one to survive. There has to be another way, Ju thought. The spear responded, showing her more equations, more possibilities. Not just a bridge to send the swarm away, but a door to a place where they could exist without consuming living worlds. Ju reached what felt like the center point. The darkness was absolute here, yet somehow she could sense the entire entity surrounding her. The spear's glow expanded, creating a sphere of blue light. Following the spear's guidance, she began to move it in precise patterns, drawing symbols in the darkness. Each movement left a trail of light that hung in the emptiness. The symbols matched those on the spear's shaft, the equations that described dimensional movement. As she completed the final symbol, the trails of light connected, forming a complex pattern all around her. The spear vibrated in her hands, drawing energy from somewhere beyond normal space. A voice filled her mind, not words, but intentions, emotions. The void entity was communicating with her. "I understand," Ju said aloud, though there was no air to carry her words. "You're trying to survive, but you're destroying everything in your path." The response came as more images, desperation, hunger, fear. "The spear can open a way to a place between universes," Ju continued, the knowledge flowing through her from the ancient weapon. "You can exist there without consuming living worlds." Doubt. Suspicion. Why would she help? "Because destruction isn't the only answer," Ju replied. Empress Taya understood that. She didn't just want to drive you away. She wanted to find a permanent solution. The pattern of light pulsed around her, growing stronger. The spear's glow intensified until it was almost blinding. Ju felt her oxygen running low, her protective bubble weakening. With a final surge of effort, she thrust the spear into the center of the pattern. Light exploded outward, tearing open the fabric of reality. Beyond the opening, Ju glimpsed a space between spaces, not empty, but filled with ambient energy, enough to sustain the swarm without needing to consume worlds. The void entity hesitated, then began to flow toward the opening. Around them, the smaller entities followed, drawn to the new source of sustenance. The massive darkness that had surrounded Ju thinned, then disappeared through the dimensional doorway. As the last of the swarm passed through, Ju felt her strength failing. Her suit was damaged, her oxygen nearly gone. The spear's protective field flickered and weakened. Just as her vision began to darken, she felt something grab her. A rescue ship, sent after them when communications with Nari's vessel had been lost. Strong silver arms pulled her inside, and the blessed sensation of air filled her lungs. "She did it," someone was saying. "The swarm is gone." Jumu clutched the spear, which now glowed with a soft, steady light. The dimensional doorway had closed, but the connection remained, a path the swarm could follow without returning to consume living worlds. Days later, Ju stood in the sacred stone chamber once again. The stone still swirled with colors, but calmer now, more balanced. Elder Minho and Commander Neri stood with her, along with representatives from every world in the triumvirate. "The prophecy has been fulfilled," Minho said. "You have led us through our darkest hour, Ambassador Ju. What will you do with the spear now?" Nari asked. Ju looked at the ancient weapon in her hands. Its markings had changed, showing new equations, new possibilities. "I don't think my work is done," she said. "The spear is showing me more. Other threats, other challenges. I think Empress Taya meant for it to be a guide, not just a weapon for a single battle." Then perhaps, Minho suggested, it is time for a new tradition. Not a spear waiting in stone for 10,000 years, but a spear actively protecting all worlds. As the first human ambassador to pull the sacred spear from its stone, Ju had changed Valastoran history forever. But more importantly, she had shown that understanding was sometimes more powerful than strength, and that even the darkest hour could end not in destruction, but in a new beginning. The spear hummed softly in her hands, ready for whatever challenges the universe might bring next.